Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see everyone in person again. So exciting. I'm going to get us started. We're going to allow people to trickle in if they're still coming. But I also have a lot to talk about, so I want to make the best use of my time. Welcome to the metagame of leadership. I'm Emilie Poissenot, and I've been in some sort of leadership role in the games industry for a decade. And I've been rambling about it at GCAP for half of that. So that tells you that I have like a really strong ambition to make us all better leaders. I believe in cultivating an awesome set of tools so that you're all equipped to use different things in different situations and be adaptable and be as good of a leader as you can be. And I also firmly believe that leadership skills aren't just good if you intend to be leading a team, but also as an employee throughout your career, making yourself heard and being able to get into the situations that you want and the kind of roles that you want and be able to help your managers give you the support that you need in order to do your best work. So out of curiosity, any previous attendees that have seen some of my other talks on leadership? Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for trusting me with another hour of your time. The previous years of my talks are available online. They are not required reading for this one. It's all building up on top of each other because the reality of things is that there is just a whole lot of leadership advice out there. And a whole lot of good leadership advice as well. Like there's a track worth of talks at this very event. If you go on Google, you will find yourself down a rabbit hole really, really quickly. There's books, there's videos, there's articles, there's just so much of it. And some of it is bad too, but you know, we're not gonna talk about that today. In previous talks, I've compared leadership advice and just how many tools are out there to a deck of cards from Magic the Gathering. There's just so much. How do you pick your deck? What is the best strategy? How do you go about playing? What even is Magic the Gathering? It can be extremely overwhelming, right? So in previous years, I've tried to organize leadership advice in as neat piles as possible, in little cards that I could give out to build your toolkit, and hopefully you would find yourself playing them in the right situations as you need them in your leadership journey. But what I've come to realize is that I failed to explain what the game is. I've given cards, but I haven't really told you how to win. I'm like the really bad, excited gamer who hands off the controller to someone who's never played and doesn't give any context. So I'm gonna try to get rid of that assumed knowledge and actually go back to some of the things that I learned really early on in my leadership journey. So early that I had this baby face. We were having a little fall-themed day at work, so hence the orange. This was when I first got my first leadership role in the games industry. And the company I was working at organized an awesome training for all of their new leaders to help give us the tools to be the best leaders we could be. And one of the key opening statements in that training was this: toxic bosses have authority through fear. They create that sort of environment where anyone who yells the loudest is going to win the conversation. Whereas leaders have authority through trust. They build relationship with their teams, and there's a mutual trust, and we're all working together towards the same goal. And in case the color coding isn't quite clear enough, we want to be leaders. We don't want to be bosses. And when that was communicated to me, at a surface level, it feels very self-evident. We make trust-based decisions all the time. We don't take advice from sources we don't trust. We cut people out that have damaged our trust. We make those decisions all the time. So to be quite honest, this baby face heard leadership is about trust and went, duh. That's not news. And the training went on, and as part of that training, they presented a neat little framework, and it looked like a flower. It's so cute, and you know, it kind of dropped in the back of my head and went semi-forgotten in the back of my head, because I was like, yeah, no, I know, trust, important, cool. And over the years, I started collecting a whole bunch of power-ups. different leadership tools, different ways of approaching situations, different ways of connecting with people, and finding quite a bit of success with those power-ups and using them in different situations, sometimes very successfully, sometimes not. And then I started noticing that the very same tools sometimes succeed, sometimes fail, sometimes it depends on the person, sometimes it depends on the situation. Why are power-ups not always working as well as they should be? I must be missing some context. And just right there in the back of my mind, the answer was lying in wait. And it was staring me right in the face. And as you can tell, I am not above using really nerdy jokes to make sure it doesn't take you a decade for this framework to stick to your brain. Because what I realized when I went down the Google rabbit hole to find what was the company that gave us the training, what was the flower, what was the content of it, I feel like it's important. What I realized is that once you truly understand how much trust matters as a leader, it is like seeing through the matrix. Suddenly you understand the metagame. You understand how all of those tools, all of those interactions come together to make you a good leader, to make you successful in leading your team, in achieving really ambitious goals and reaching for the stars. If I go back to kind of my Mario Kart analogy with the power-ups, if you don't understand that you're in a race, what your position is, and you don't know what the track is, and you've never played before, sure, the power-ups are going to be useful, but they're not going to be as useful as they are to someone who understands the full context of what they're playing. So we're going to try to get rid of that question mark as much as possible by doing a deep dive into that flower-looking framework and in what it means to value trust as part of our leadership and how we can foster that with a team. So we're going to look at the framework, a little bit at how it applies, and hopefully by the end, you can also see through the matrix. That's my goal today. Not ambitious at all. So the starting point. I've mentioned this a couple of times before. Leadership is about trust. And it sounds like a simple self-evident statement. There is so much research across industries on this topic that it's pretty obvious that it's important when you start looking into it. And it has a general picture of what that research kind of concludes, is that when you look at trust and distrust, on the side of trust, when you have a team that trusts each other, they feel safe, they collaborate more, they're more forgiving of mistakes, they're more resilient when change inevitably happens and you need to restructure or you need to change the way you're approaching the project or the project gets a curveball because they trust that they can navigate through it. They trust their leaders to lead them to success. You have better retention of people on the team. People are motivated to work. And when all of this comes together, that's where you have innovation. People who feel, threatened, feel like they're not in a trusting environment, will not take risks, will not feel comfortable failing, and as a result, will take the safest path, and we won't have as much innovation. And as we're working in games, we know how much innovation is important to us, even in the small things of how we make this genre, this sort of game, just a little bit better, or how we take a big stab in the dark and mash things up that have never been mashed up before. At the other end of the spectrum, when we have a lot of distrust on a team, there's resistance to pulling together and fulfilling objectives. There's hesitation. There's fear that things are going to come back to haunt us, that we're not going to be respected, or that if we fail, it's definitely going to be reflected on our performance review, even if it was the right decision to make at the time. There's stress, there's uncertainty, and as a result, people may disengage and just do the bare minimum. They may leave and seek another job where they feel like they can trust the company or trust their leaders. And overall, as a team, we're going to be underperforming because we're going to be spending so much energy in that negative space of fear and distrust. And we're going to be playing it so safe that we're not going to shoot for the stars. So it should go without saying that what we're trying to do is to get as far on that green as possible, to create a team that trusts our leadership, trusts our plan, so that we can execute on it really efficiently. Now, I said that there was a lot of literature on trust and a lot of research. The framework that we're going to talk about today was based on the work of Stephen M.R. Covey. So he wrote a couple of books, full disclosure, they're on my to-read list. I haven't read them yet, but they're very well regarded. And his work on trust and credibility was what led to the framework that that training company eons ago used to talk to me about trust. So the whole framework starts with credibility. And credibility is the quality of being trusted and of being convincing. The reality of it is that we don't follow the ambitions of questionable leaders. We're just not up for that, because why would we invest our energy in something that we don't believe in, right? And when people talk about, oh, this person is a natural leader, what they're actually saying is this person is very credible. They know how to create trust. We trust in what they're saying. They have the expertise. People follow them because they're credible. That's not super actionable in the day-to-day, but luckily the framework is more helpful. And Stephen Covey breaks it down into 4 key pillars that we're going to talk about today. Here's the flower in all of its glory. So the 4 pillars that we're going to discuss is first, integrity and intention. Those are 2 sides of our character and how our character is perceived by the world around us. And then we also have capabilities and results, which are qualifiers of our competence, our actual technical skills, and how we go about doing the work. Let's go through them one by one. First, cab of the block, integrity. The way that I summarize it is how we express our character, how it appears to others. That's our honesty as a leader. And when most people think about trust, the first thing that we think about as a breach of trust is a breach of honesty, is a lie, right? So this is really important to, us standing strong in our position as a leader is to be honest when it's good, when it's bad. It's important. It's part of our integrity. Another aspect of it is our self-confidence and the trust that other people have in us. If we're not trusting ourselves and we're constantly self-doubting, it plants the question in other people's mind as to whether or not they should trust us. When we have a lot of people coming to a talk, thank you, it sends a message that we're trusted, that people, that you have a reputation of integrity, of using people's times well and respecting people. It's also about walking our talk, about our actions matching what we say. That shows that we're true to ourselves, we're true to our values, we have the courage to live by our values even when it's difficult, and we're going to do what we say and you can trust our word. And that's also accountability. We can have all of the integrity in the world and be honest and all of that. If we disappear when we've made a mistake and we don't acknowledge it and we don't take it on board, people are going to start distrusting our integrity. That pillar is going to get damaged. There's a lot of leadership literature written specifically about integrity and about all of that work of being a courageous leader and living true to our values. 2 of my recommendations are Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, fantastic author, and also Radical Candor by Kim Scott. This is all about being honest and navigating challenging conversations with integrity and with courage, even when it gets difficult. Second pillar, intention. The way I summarize intention is as character in action. It's about our motivation and motives and what shines through when we start doing things. It's about having that straightforward agenda that everyone understands. As soon as an agenda is hidden, it may have all of the best intentions, but people will question it. It's about working towards mutual benefit, not just getting what I think needs to be done. If we have good intentions and we show that every day, our credibility is better for it. It's that collaborative, consultative approach instead of being very dictatorial and very harsh. And it all comes together as well with considering various perspectives and kind of acknowledging that we may not have the full picture and that we want the best outcome more than we want to be right. That's the true nature of intention and showing positive intention. Some additional reading on that, I do recommend Start With Why by Simon Sinek, because showing intention is about providing context. It's about explaining our reasoning and why we're doing certain things and making that agenda very clear and giving a clear purpose that everyone can rally around and that everyone can question and being open to that process. So the why is really important. Third pillar, capabilities. That's our competence, our skills in action. That is us actually showing talent, skills, knowledge in the day-to-day and being able to do the work that's expected of us to do. That's why our technical know-how is, you may realize, it's only one of 4 pillars. Because you can have all of the technical know-how in the world. If you're a jerk, you're not going to be as credible. That's just the reality of it. It's about, as leaders, our leadership style and attitude, how we approach situations, how we approach bringing a team together, and how we approach getting results. Are we very dictatorial, or do we have methods and patience and show that we have different ways of getting to the results we want and we're adaptable? That's a show of our skills. And it's also how we establish and grow trust within the team, how we tackle conflict every day as a leader, and how we keep building up a safe environment. That's where our skills shine. And finally, results. And I summarize it as a history of competence. Results is our resume. It's also the reason why I opened this talk saying that I have a decade of experience in leadership. That signals a few things and hopefully helps boost credibility and trust, right? That's why we have bios for all of the speakers. It's our past performance. It's the things that we've done with the team, the number of times we've shown up and shown to be credible. It's about fulfilling our commitments over and over again. It's our track record. It's also about doing the right thing in the right priority, in the right way, but just having that history of positive results and meeting expectations that people have. When someone regularly meets expectation, you trust them with a lot more work. When they don't, you start questioning whether or not you can trust them with that. So that's the flower. Now you understand it. But for the smart ones in the room, you may have realized that we're only halfway through this talk, because surely it cannot be this easy. So here are 3 little complicating factors, because there always are, right? So when it comes to understanding this framework in practice, one thing to consider is that credibility needs all of the pillars. Once one of them is irreparably damaged, the whole credibility tanks. It's like a very shoddy tent. It needs all of its pillars to stand up. And I'm gonna give you an example with really extreme dramatization, because I'm a theater kid and that's just where we're going. So, imagine this situation. I love my hairdresser. My hairdresser is fantastic. The whole salon is fantastic. They are absolutely true to themselves. There's so many little tidbits of decorations that are absolutely random. My hairdresser has a statuette of Hulk Hogan in her cart. That's just who they are. They communicate very clearly and embrace all of their creativity, so their integrity is immediately apparent when you walk into the salon. And every time I get in there, I get a wonderful greeting. Everyone wants me to have a good time. They have trivia sometimes while I'm getting my hair done. It's just fantastic. They obviously want to do a good job. They want me to feel fantastic and feel my best. Every time I walk out, I feel like they've shown their skills. I'm very happy with my hair. fantastic, so we have a history of fantastic results, their credibility is really, really high. I'm going to keep returning, I trust them with my hair. That being said, even though we have a fantastic history of them doing great things for my head, their credibility when it comes to brain surgery, not great. They still have their integrity. They still have good intentions. I believe that they would want to do a good job. But when it comes to their technical skills as a brain surgeon, that pillar just completely disappears in that particular context. Their credibility is nil, right? That's a very, very dramatic example of this. But it's why people who approach leadership as results by all means will eventually fail, because they may have the results, they may even have the capabilities, but at some point their intention towards the team and their integrity is going to get irreparably damaged and their credibility will tank. It's also why titles, role description matter, because when there's unclear expectations as to who should be doing what and what skills you're expected to have, you're kind of set up to fail on the capability sector. You're not going to meet expectations. Your results are not going to show up because there's a lack of clarity. So it's really important to think of all of these pillars as working together and as leaders thinking about how do we set people up for success and making sure that we're not setting an environment where, because there's no clarity, because I'm not supporting people appropriately, I'm actually putting myself in a situation to doubt my team by the way I'm leading them. Because that's a very vicious circle that gets started there. Now, that being said, I don't want you to start obsessing over every time you miss a commitment or you make a mistake. The pillars are quite resilient. It's not going to disappear all at once, because credibility is a pattern. It's very rarely one moment in time, unless you've done something really, really, really wrong. It's a pattern of actions over time. So say you're starting a new job, maybe you have a solid reputation, a really good resume, people know you from the industry, you start with credibility already. Fantastic. You nail your tasks in the first week. Credibility is fantastic again. And then, you keep working, a whole bunch of different data points get added to the scatter graph. Sometimes you do really well, sometimes something doesn't quite work out, sometimes you may not communicate as clearly as you want, a whole bunch of things happen. You have a crazy week, you're super stressed. For one decision, you're not as consultative or collaborative as you usually are. That gets in the negative. It happens. We're not perfect, we're human, it happens. But then if you keep working and you keep being in the positive, you may make another mistake, or you may have a big surprise or curveball that makes you miss a commitment. But as long as most of the data points are in the positive, the trend is in the positive, your credibility is going to be fine. And if you take accountability for those mistakes and you work on solving them, your credibility is going to be fine. But what that also means is that even if once you are the most credible leader who ever credibled, it doesn't really matter. I'm sorry. You cannot take for granted the credibility you have, or that one action is going to make you credible forever. It's really about the pattern of behavior. So it's something that I keep in mind all the time. And then lastly, credibility requires visibility. I cannot create a wonderful scatter graph if the data points are invisible. And that is probably one of the hardest parts of being a leader with high credibility. If you're a producer or a team manager, a lot of the work we do is invisible. And unless we take the time to communicate, give context, and sometimes it feels like we're repeating things that are very obvious to us, but that the team may have lost track of, or that may have been invisible, unless we take the time, the data points don't exist. And credibility, to go back to our definition, is being trusted and being convincing, which means that credibility is given to us by someone else. It doesn't matter if we know that we have the best of intentions, if we know that we're true to ourselves and that we have the skills and all of that. If we're working in the shadows and the team cannot see our work, they're going to fill in the blanks themselves. Sometimes they're going to fill them in the positive if you already have credibility established. But if your credibility is starting to tank and then your work goes invisible, it's going to keep tanking. So we want to factor all of these aspects in when we're thinking about how we present ourselves as leader and how do we foster trust with our team. We need to be comfortable making our work visible. And if we're not sure about making it visible, maybe our work isn't as well-intentioned as we think. So what does that mean in practice? I could talk about credibility in practice for the whole conference. I'm not going to do that. It's really easy to spot the big things that you shouldn't do to damage your credibility. Don't lie to your team. Don't reveal embarrassing personal details about a team member in a team meeting in front of everyone else. Those big things are really easy to spot. I probably don't need to list them all to you. What is really interesting to me is the power of small things. Things that may seem meaningless in the flurry of everything we have to do as a leader. But in terms of what is visible to the team and how we interact with them and what matters to our team members and how we care for them and support them, those small things can make a massive difference. So I'm going to show you a very simple example that I'm going to assume we all encounter. Mario has done work. And he has a wonderful document ready for review. We get asked for feedback all the time, right? If we don't say anything, if we don't acknowledge receiving this message, invisible data point. Person doesn't know, gonna fill in the blanks, make their best guess as to whether or not you're gonna get to it and by when. We haven't really provided them context. So it may swing in our favor, it may not. If we don't provide feedback and they have to follow up, then suddenly, oh, do they intend to support me? Are they looking after what's important to me? Do they have the skills? Do they prioritize their work appropriately? Questions start to spark. Now, don't get me wrong. One time not replying to a Slack message is not going to tank your credibility. But if there's a pattern, and every time someone asks you for feedback, there's dead air, and they have to follow up, that creates the trend. And what they're going to internalize and what they're going to think about is, okay, if I need feedback by this date, I need to ask for it at this date, I need to follow up at that date because I know I'm not going to get it otherwise. They don't trust you to give you the feedback they need in the time frame they need it by. So your overall results and your overall credibility is affected. Again, it may not be tanking all of your leadership, but it is something to consider. So let's run this scenario in a slightly different way. This is something that I noticed that I was doing a lot by default, is providing more context to people. Because I'm someone who really loves context, so most of the time I'll ask for it and it matters to me, and I'm like, maybe it matters to other people, and so I guess I'm gonna do this now. And then when I looked at it through the lens of the flower, I was like, oh, that actually helps people trust that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. So, Mario asks for feedback, acknowledging reception. This isn't awful. This is better than dead air. But if you notice, going, I'll get to it when I have a chance, is very non-committal. It's not as helpful as it could be. It shows good intent. But in effect, with this answer, you're just acknowledging that you've gotten the content. A better version of this is to say, I set myself a reminder for tomorrow, I should get to it before lunch. Because now I'm showing intent, but I'm also valuing the fact that maybe knowing when you're going to get the feedback helps you plan your work. That may be important to you. And I'm also setting myself up for accountability, which helps show that I value doing the right thing by you. So it reinforces that positive. Now, what I feel is a superpower here is that I don't need to get the feedback ASAP. And I know sometimes as leaders, we're like, oh, supporting the team means doing everything as soon as they ask for it. Don't do that to yourself, please. You don't need to do that. But quickly acknowledging that you've received it and giving a timeline as to when you're going to get to it has the absolute same effect as doing it immediately. Unless it's a big fire priority that needs to be done immediately, obviously. But if it's properly prioritized, people fully understand that. They all know that we have a lot on our plate, that we're juggling a whole bunch of stuff. But knowing where they are in the queue gives them confidence and gives them trust. Now, don't set yourself an unrealistic deadline here. I set this kind of stuff accounting for the meetings that I have, the other things I need to get to according to priorities, where I'm most productive in the day. So I set a realistic timeline so that most of the time I don't miss it. Because if we deliver on time and we fulfill our commitment, we have a full green flower. We have a history of result, we've showed our skills, we've prioritized right, we've showed good intent, and we've held ourselves accountable. But if we don't deliver, it's going to start falling into the same pattern we had with the radio silence before. We're set up for a better situation because we've set ourselves up for accountability. And if we take accountability of not delivering on time, it's going to help. So don't be afraid to commit. Sometimes you're going to miss commitments. That is fine. That's the little negative dot point that you can easily recover from. It's all about how you react when you're missing the commitment. Here's an example. Oftentimes when I know that I'm going to miss a commitment that I've set, I'm going to follow up with something like, hey, reshuffled priorities due to this event. If I can share exactly the context, I will, because they understand that it's important and they get more visibility over why I'm making the decisions I'm making. Is this feedback blocking you, or can I get it to you by Friday? And what that does is that, again, I take accountability for the delay, which is good. I give a reason why, which shows my skills and how I'm making decisions and how I go about getting results. And I'm also checking if it's okay to create a two-way communication street and give them an opportunity to revise my priorities if I've gotten it wrong. Because I may not know, and that's okay. That's part of my integrity in showing intent that I want to do the best for them so that they can tell me if I'm making the wrong decision here. It gives people confidence in how I prioritize and how I go about getting things done. So our flower is quite green, even if we've missed the commitment. We can also do this delegating the whole thing to someone else. Hey, got a curveball, won't get to it, but Widgie's awesome, I trust their judgment. That does a few different things here. It offers a path to a solution. It helps Widgie's credibility because I've set them up as a person that I trust. And it shows my thought process and why I'm doing things, and again, makes things very obvious as to why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. I see so many leaders, when they run out of time, delegate things to other people in secret, not communicating back to the person who's asked for support. And while to us it may feel like we're providing the support that was asked, even if it's coming from someone else, if there's a pattern of that over and over again for the person asking for support, it feels like we're a hot potato and we're just going to get passed around to someone else to help us. Or it feels like, who's making the decision? Are you actually running this project, or is this person running this project? Every time I ask for a decision, you delegate and you don't tell me about it. Like, what's happening? There's no data, so they will fill in the blanks, and that may not always be flattering. So I hope you can see, even with this simple example, that this is the small little data points that create the trend. And the reality of it is that no one will consciously go, you don't reply to my message, unless you've fully lost their trust. Most of the time, these little tiny habits are just factoring in the back of our mind and our subconscious. And before we know it, we're like, why don't I trust this person? It's all of those little things that create that burden of proof and create that trend. So, personally, when I notice that I'm starting to doubt someone, that their credibility has gone down in my eye, the first thing I do to evaluate the situation is ask myself, when I notice that they don't trust me, sorry, we'll get to the other way around later. When I notice that people are resisting my leadership or not listening to the priorities that I'm setting, or things aren't quite working out, the first thing that I ask to self-evaluate is, what part of my work is invisible? And can I make it visible? This is a first step in diagnosing my credibility in the eye of the team. And it's a very kind one, because at this stage, I'm still assuming that I'm doing the right thing. And that the only problem is that I'm doing it in the dark and people are confused and are filling in the data points themselves. And that if I provide more visibility and more clarity, it's gonna help bring us together and bring us around. So it's kind of my warm-up exercise. Because again, I'm still assuming that I'm doing the right thing here. But it's important when you're trying to troubleshoot your credibility that you're really honest and really humble. And put yourself in the shoes of your team members and how they may see you and the visibility that they have over your work. Because my next step, if making things more visible isn't working, is to go on a little round trip around the flower and ask myself a whole bunch of questions. Am I showing up? Am I taking accountability? When I say something, do I match it with actions? Or is my integrity damaged? And are my intentions clear and supportive, or is part of my agenda hidden, or just confusing because I didn't take the time to explain it properly, or I haven't reiterated my intent? Are my capabilities in question, especially as a leader? The rationale behind our decisions and why we're proposing certain things. Sometimes we need to take people on that journey for them to see the skills and the reasoning why. Is there something that I can do there to improve it? Are my results okay? Is there, context and clear prioritization in my action and how I go about getting results? And is my history transparent? Is there anything I can do to improve? And that's me personally, but it's also team reaction to different initiatives within the team. Like, if no one on the team trusts that the retro holds any value, maybe there's work that needs to be done in clearer follow-ups and clearer accountability and making sure that all of the leaders who are meant to enact the things from the retro are showing up to do it. Or if people are, resisting the prioritization of tasks, maybe I'm not communicating clearly enough, and maybe that's the problem. Or maybe I'm not hearing their point of view and they have a valid point. And my intent to have the best prioritization is in question. So all of the tools that I've presented in different talks so that you can gather yourself online through your experience, they all feed into solving some of these problems that come back to how much does the team trust their leader. Now, it works the other way around as well. When I notice myself distrusting someone on the team, I do a little bit of an analysis as well, and start thinking about where in those pillars is the damage to their credibility. Why am I feeling like I have to micromanage them? I don't want to be this person. Why am I not trusting them? In which aspect exactly? And then, is that based on facts that I've observed, or based on an absence of data and the story I tell myself to fill in those blanks? And then, can I gather missing facts and reassess my opinion if I'm filling in the blanks? Can I help and try to understand them better and where they're coming from, and have that discussion with them? Can I give them feedback, tools, support that will help them rebuild my trust? As leaders, we do a lot of coaching. It's not useful to just throw random tools at people and ask them to master them. But when you realize why they're struggling as leader on the team or why you're distrusting them, you can pinpoint the exact area where they need the support and look through your toolkit that you've gathered and give them the right one to help immediately shift that trend. Because a lot of the time, the solution to this is just more visibility and clarity of communication. Because a lot of the time, people are doing the right work. Don't get me wrong, that's not always true. But a lot of the time it is. And just taking the time to sanity check that and validate that is how we show care and how we support people on the team, instead of jumping to judgment and writing them off. So I could talk about this for like literal hours, very passionate about this topic. But I'm almost done. And the last thing that I want to say in terms of evaluating distrust is also, once you've done your evaluation, assessing whether or not it's time to escalate. Sometimes we distrust people for very good reasons. And that's okay, and it's not a failure on us as leaders. How do we handle it? How do we help rebuilding it? Is that something that can be fixed with better coaching, skills development, all of that? Or support if they're struggling, and just seeing how can we gather the type of support that they need in order to rebuild that trust. Sometimes it needs to come from a third party if the relationship between us is too damaged. That brings us to my final little summary of takeaways. First thing is, credibility is the metagame of leadership. It all comes down to trust. And knowing and internalizing that means that we make better use of our leadership tools. And credibility is integrity multiplied by intention, multiplied by capabilities, multiplied by results. And I'm using multiply here very intentionally, because if one of those is 0, the sum total is 0. Credibility is a trend. It's not one moment in time. It's something that we have to care about and keep caring about and factor into our decision-making and how we approach interacting with our team as leaders constantly. And our visible actions is what creates the pattern of whether or not we can be trusted. And that means that even the little consistent habits make a difference, because it creates that burden of proof that we can be trusted and that we're going to be there and that we're going to be helping. And then when we set a goal and it's ambitious, we're going to shepherd it through, and we believe that the team can achieve it, and we can fail along the way, and we're going to realign if needed. They trust that whatever hurdles we're going to encounter, we're going to help them through. And that's me for today. I hope I have fulfilled my ambition of helping you as leaders, and we have a few minutes for questions. Thank you. So we have 5 minutes for questions.
So I think, thank you so much for the talk. Great topic. I think most leaders in time with credibility will find, if you have it, at some point there will be a decision in your business that you have to disagree and commit to, and other people are asking you to spend your credibility. And I wonder if you have any examples or times that you faced that, and how you've kind of handled that internalization of like, this isn't me, but I have to own this. Thanks.
Yeah, really great question. It's always a challenging situation. And the secret for me is I have to understand the decision. And I have to, whoever has made the decision needs to take the time to make it credible to me. Like, I need to understand why it's happening. And even if I disagree with it, hopefully they have enough credibility that I go, okay, I'm on board. And then that goes down the chain, right? But if they don't take any time to explain and I don't have any information, then my only approach in that situation is to rely on my integrity and be transparent with people. I don't have the information yet. I'm going to go ask those questions. I'm going to get those answers. And hopefully that's where me having credibility is going to help people not overstress and give us the space to handle that communication and hopefully make it better.
Yeah, again, mirroring what Chris said, really, really awesome talk. Question I have, when you're talking about managing the credibility of others, when you notice that your trust is beginning to fail in people, the context in which I took that is managing down. How would you manage the situation where the credibility of those above you is coming into question, and that's making it difficult to kind of manage that trickle down you just mentioned there?
Yeah, the short answer is the exact same way. But then I'm a very stubborn and self-confident person. But what I try doing is do the same respectful analysis of like, why do I not trust you anymore? And try to pinpoint the main reason for it, and then respectfully, supportively provide feedback and try to lead into that direction. One of the key things for me, because of the way I process information and what I care about, leaders that don't give me a reason why certain things are decided or happening, I can't. And if repetitively they don't take the time to explain and give me that context, I stop trusting their decision making. So what I'll do is I'll just ask constantly, like, why? Give me context. I need more context. So there is a way to do it, managing upwards. It does take courage. It's not easy when you have to do that with a leader. And it's not easy to do that when your trust is really damaged. And it's important to self-assess when it's no longer on you to repair that relationship and when you need external help.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Unsurprising, wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've got, by my count, 1 minute to answer my horrible question of, you mentioned Brené Brown's book. I'm wondering where vulnerability fits into the flower model.
For me, vulnerability fits a lot into integrity. It's how we show we're human. And it also helps for me to show intent. Because every now and then we're going to have the best of intentions, and situation's going to change, or we made a decision too quickly, we made a mistake. That happens. That's fine. But owning that, being vulnerable about it, and allowing yourself in the uncomfortable space of having this conversation is how you show that you have that positive intent, that it's, again, more important for you to do the right thing than to be right. And that's integrity and intent for me. Thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. I think we're out of time, but I'm going to stick around if you have more questions.